Hello there, my beautiful internet friends. Welcome back to Trauma Talk. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I really appreciate it. I think the things that we think are going to be hardest about trauma aren't always the most difficult. For me, one of the most painful things was how people responded to me after I was assaulted, when I was in a very emotional, broken, needy state, when I needed people to be there for me. They didn't know how to be, and they weren't to a large extent. And healing from that piece of it, even more than the abuse that I went through, healing from that piece of it has definitely been one of the biggest challenges for me. And there was one situation that stood out like this shining star of people causing me pain who didn't intend to cause me pain, but really freaking hurt me. And I wanted to tell you the story about that today and how I reconciled it. This comment came from someone who was extremely close to me. We weren't super close anymore, but years later when I was in a support group, I was still thinking about this thing that was said. It was still actively affecting me. I was bitter and angry, and I didn't want to be bitter and angry, but I also didn't know how to freaking let it go. So I did this one thing that I'm going to tell you guys about in this story time sort of video today. And it really helped me. This is not a recommendation to do so. I'd recommend you do anything like this. Maybe talking to trusted people in your lives. That's definitely what I did. But you'll understand what I mean with that in just a moment. I did want to thank all my patrons over on Patreon for sponsoring this video today. Thank you for choosing to be members of that community. It means the world to me. If you're interested in what Patreon is or how it could support this channel or what you could do if you're interested, check out the link on screen or in the description. Yes, the description down below. Okay, so in the immediate weeks after I was assaulted, I left this abusive relationship. I was a puddle of just trauma and PTSD and depression and anxiety and panic and confusion and loss. I talked to a very good friend of mine. Now, this is someone who I had known since I was 13. I stayed with her family for a little while through high school. Their family was very much my family, like my second family. I spent more time with them than I probably did with my actual family throughout high school. And they were one of the other leaders of this church. Now, if you know anything about my story, you know that the person who harmed me was also a leader in this church. Now, they didn't know that. They didn't know what kind of person he was, right? I don't blame them at all for that. But just to reiterate, my friend was acting in a leadership role. And so when I was starting to think about not wanting to be alive every day, when I started having very suicidal thoughts, and I was just in so much darkness, I was like, you know what? The thing that people do when they say they're feeling this way is they talk to people they trust, because if you don't talk about it when you feel like you don't want to be alive anymore, bad things will happen. Like, that was what was going on in my head. I was like, this is what I've always been told to do, so I'm going to go to the person that I trust. And I did. And we sat down and I explained what I was feeling, that I felt like I didn't want to be here anymore. And I didn't actually want to end my life, but I really did want to end my life. And I was just very confused and reaching out to them for help, both as someone who was in a leadership position in my church and also as someone who was a very close friend of mine. The response that they had was, Joe, there are children in Africa with their limbs blown off. You don't really have a right to feel this way. At that time, when I heard that, I wasn't sure how to receive it. Also, can we just acknowledge the fact that it's really funny that now I am actually missing a limb, so I do qualify based on that statement, except that I'm not in another continent. But their reaction to my reaching out for help and saying, hey, here's what's going on, I just want to let you know, was to get upset with me, was to get angry, was to almost scold me for the very dark feelings that I had when I had no idea what to do with them. And I don't even remember how the rest of that interaction went, honestly, but I very much remember what was said to me. And as years went on, my relationship with that person just sort of naturally drifted away, but that comment definitely had something to do with it. And I was in a support group 6 years later, and I was talking about this. I was telling this story, and I realized that I had told that story in particular to a lot of people without naming the person involved. That when I said it, I knew how ridiculous it was. Like, I knew that you should never tell someone who's suicidal, hey, other people have it worse, so deal with it. Like, I knew that wasn't a good thing. It was almost laughable how bad of a reaction that was. But this was a person who was supposed to know what they were doing. They had built themselves up to be someone that people looked up to, someone that people went to for healing and help, and, you know, spiritual, mental, emotional. They were a leader, and they were also my friend. They were my friend for years, for many of my developmentally important years. And the reaction that they gave me was basically very dismissive. Now, I can think about this now and realize that they were there for me many other moments. There were other moments when they really tried to support me, even if they didn't exactly know how. And I really appreciate that, but I never remembered any of that because of this one comment that just grew in my mind. And the problem was I believed it to some extent. I kept on thinking, my trauma doesn't really matter. What I've gone through is not that bad. Just frickin', why aren't you better by now, Joe? Deal with it. Just get better. And there was a lot of self-hatred attached to that. So years later, I'm sitting here in the support group and one of the leaders asks, well, did you ever talk to them about what they said? And I was like, no, I never want to frickin' talk to them. I'm sure, I'm sure it wouldn't go well anyways. And then the support group conversation went on, but I started thinking about that. So the next week I came back and I was like, why would I reach out to them? Like, I can forgive them without having to talk to them about this, right? Because it felt weird to bring up something from 5 years in the past, like a comment that had been made years ago. But the more I talked about it, I realized that this person was still in a position of leadership, even more so, I think, at that point than when they talked to me, and that they would probably be interacting with other people who had been hurt or traumatized, and I didn't want that comment to be directed towards anyone else. And I think I used that as my justification to reach out when really I was looking for some kind of apology, I think. So I remember sitting with my friend one night and I just drafted out the whole thing. I explained, hey, I'm not coming to you with this out of a place of like rage or anything like that, but just so you know, what you said really hurt me. Now, here's what you said, here's the circumstances under which it happened, and I want to let you know that that's really affected me. It's affected how I've thought about myself and how I've sought help. And I know that you still work with people who might be experiencing similar things, so just so you know, that wasn't great for me, and I hope that's okay to say. And I had no idea if they would respond. I kind of thought that I would send that message and then they would hate me forever, right? But not that long later, my phone pings and there is a long message from this person. And what they said was, I'm so sorry. I am so sincerely sorry. I do not remember saying that, but I understand that I did say it. I know that you remember it. I know that it happened, but it was really callous of me and I should have been there for you better, and I'm sorry. And that like brought me to tears at the time because I never expected an apology from anyone. There were a lot of people who didn't know how to support me and said intentionally or unintentionally cruel things to me. And there was always justification for that. Like there was never an apology for anything. And here's this person that I really looked up to, that I had a good relationship with at one point in my life, taking me at my word and saying that they were sincerely sorry and that they would take what I said into consideration in their future interactions with people. And we're good. I run into them from time to time and I wish nothing but the absolute best for their family. For me personally, I feel like this illustrates a couple different things in my overarching story. Finding a way to have a voice again, to state things and have people listen to them, to be heard, was a really hard process for me. Sometimes it still is, and it is for many trauma survivors. Trauma can make you feel like you're silenced, like your voice doesn't matter. Maybe someone told you that. Maybe someone demonstrated that towards you. Maybe that's just how you feel. And finding ways to exercise your voice, what you want, what you're thinking, to be heard by people who are there for you, is so healing and so necessary. So to reach out to someone who had hurt me and say, hey, you hurt me, here's why, and I just wanted you to know. And frankly, if they had never responded to me, I still would have felt okay about what I said because I was exercising my voice. I wasn't doing so in a hateful or harsh way, but I was standing up for myself and saying, hey, that wasn't cool, I didn't like it, it hurt me. That can sound like such a small little thing to stand up for yourself, but God, is it difficult. God, is it really, really hard to do. At least for me, it takes a lot of effort, a lot of work. The other thing, and maybe the bigger thing that it really illustrates for me, is people don't always know what they're doing and what they're saying. There were so many things, like I said, that people said to me that stuck in my mind that took many years to work through and like let go and forgive and all of that. And I sort of always thought in my head that that they knew what they were saying, that it was premeditated, that they just didn't want to be there for me, they were just trying to be jerks. But it made me realize that's not at all the case. Some people are just sincerely ignorant. Some people don't know how to deal with someone who's hurt. Some people just say things as knee-jerk reactions. I've sure done that. And these subjects are hard to talk about. Not everyone is prepared to do that. Not everyone is prepared to do that in the moment when it comes up. So to have that person say, I don't even remember saying that, and I'm really sorry, it really reminds me that people are broken and flawed and sometimes say things they don't mean and sometimes don't remember what they said and oftentimes have no idea how what they're saying affects us. Being able to explain to that person in my life, this is why your words affected me the way that they did, was really healing for me in a variety of ways, but it was also great to spread education when I was at a place where I could do that. This rings true for a lot of other situations, and I've definitely carried it with me that people make mistakes, and sometimes that's okay, and sometimes it's really not okay. Sometimes it stings for a moment, sometimes it hurts for a decade. But understanding that not everything came from a place of intent was important to me, and the fact that they would deeply regret what they said and apologize for it hadn't really crossed my mind too much. Now, I do want to say that this story is not a recommendation to do something similar if you have someone in your life who said something to you and it hurt you. I did so after talking to a lot of people that I knew, loved, and trusted, and people who had my best interests at heart, I also did so fully prepared for them never to respond, for them never to say anything. It was kind of more of a therapeutic exercise for myself than anything. So if you're thinking about doing something like this, trust your gut, trust your judgment, trust people around you if you feel like talking to them about it. I know that was helpful for me. We as people don't need people to apologize to us to heal and to move forward through something. It definitely helps sometimes. But I always remember that period, that week in my life when I made the decision to reach back out to this person, because it gave me a piece of my own voice back. I was able to help educate someone, and I realized, oh my gosh, sometimes people just make mistakes. Those mistakes hurt like hell, and they can hurt deeply and for a very long time, and that is completely valid. But not everyone is trying to not be there. Not everyone is trying to be hurtful or harmful or naive. Sometimes people just are. So I'm curious if you can relate to this in any way. Do you have a story that mirrors it or that is similar? Do you want to reach out to someone who's hurt you before and don't know how or don't know if you should? I've definitely been there. It's a confusing place to be, but I'd love to hear from you in the comment section down below. I read all comments. I don't have a chance to always respond to all of them, but I do read them. And again, thank you to my patrons for sponsoring this video. Patreon is a platform that builds community and allows additional access to things. For instance, I'll do exclusive videos over there, or early access videos, or behind the scenes, things of that nature. And if you're interested in joining, check out the link on screen or down below. To you watching this video right now, thank you. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes out of your day here with me. It means the world to me. You could be anywhere in the world doing anything, and you chose to hang out with me for a couple minutes, and that means a lot to me. Thank you. I love you guys. I'm thinking about you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.